Welcome to PLUSone, the series where each month I look at the free games on PlayStation Plus and tell you if they're worth the download. After all, the games may be free, but your time is valuable. Today I'm opening up the free games for March by looking at 2016's Ratchet Clank, an action platformer hybrid made by the prolific Insomniac Games. If you couldn't tell by my channel's name, I'm kind of a Ratchet guy, so this video was pretty easy to make. The game follows Ratchet, a cat-like creature known as a Lombax, and his newfound robotic pal Clank as they try to save the galaxy from the nefarious Chairman Drek. If you've ever played the first Ratchet game, this might sound incredibly familiar, like almost identical. Well, I'm gonna nip this one in the bud. This is not a remake of the original PS2 Ratchet. It's not a reboot for the franchise either. It is a reimagining of the first game in the series, as told in 2016's Ratchet & Clank movie. Quite literally, it's a game based on a movie based on a game. If that sounds confusing, stay with me, I'll explain. First off, if you've never touched a Ratchet game before, they're a hybrid of action, third-person shooter, and platformer, all rolled up into one game with a hefty amount of explosions. You'll use dozens of unique weapons and gadgets to fight your way through each world, leveling up each one as you go. Some weapons include a shotgun that turns enemies into pixels, a disco ball that'll stop all enemies in their tracks and force them to dance, including tanks mind you, Mr. Zircon, a smack-talking robot who will float by you and shoot everything in your way, and the Sheepinator, which will turn almost every enemy in the game into, well, a sheep. Some of these might sound familiar to you Ratchet veterans out there. That's because this game's arsenal is essentially a greatest hits of pretty much the entire franchise. This game has one of the most satisfying feedback loops that gaming has ever had. Each enemy you defeat will give you experience for your weapon and also to upgrade your health bar, as well as drop this universe's currency, bolts. Each encounter feels incredibly fun as you strafe and jump back and forth through hails of weapon fire with particle effects and bolts flying around everywhere, all the while leveling up several simple but fulfilling experience bars. On the topic of those particle effects, this game is gorgeous. The phrase, "it's like playing a Pixar movie," is often used when describing this series, and it is absolutely true. Arguably, Ratchet sits only behind the two PS4 Uncharted games in terms of graphical fidelity, and it has a PS4 Pro patch to make it look even better. Now you might be wondering why they had to reimagine the first game at all. The original game, while it was a great game in its own right, used a wildly different control scheme than the rest of the series. This sometimes made it difficult for new Ratchet fans to go back and experience the start of the franchise. So when a Ratchet movie was being made based on that first game, Insomniac jumped at the opportunity to modernize the experience like they'd always wanted to. For the most part, they absolutely did. Of the original's near 20 levels, this Ratchet only uses about half of them, along with a couple of new levels. Those old levels, though, are spot-for-spot remakes, with some levels even having optional new areas off the beaten path. There's a lot more I could say, but for the sake of being concise, I'll just link to my full review of the game from right after its release. If you want more detailed info about this Ratchet game, or the original for that matter, definitely check out either of those reviews, but in a nutshell, from a pure gameplay and visual standpoint, this is the best that Ratchet has ever been. Everything that's been tweaked and improved over the last 15 years is put to perfect use. The last remaining thread then is the story. Like I mentioned, this game follows the movie's plot, which in itself is an adapted retelling of the original game. Ratchet 1 already had some issues narratively, but the movie ends up dipping below even that. Now, the movie's not this horrible abomination that you might hear people say it is, it's just incredibly average, usually having the texture of cardboard. This game often reuses the movie's scene for key plot points, which doesn't always work in its favor, as it was only allotted a certain number of movie cutscenes. What ends up happening is that both Ratchet and Clank lose most of their personality in the name of focusing on other characters like Captain Quark, or highlighting terrible movie characters like Korra. It's certainly disappointing, but it doesn't hurt the experience that much. That said, you don't need to watch the movie to understand the game, they're both self-contained adventures that, if anything, slightly enhance one another. Honestly, if this is the first Ratchet game you're playing, or at least the first one in a while, you probably won't even notice and you'll most likely love it. If you're a big fan, you probably bought it day one, loved it for about a year or so, and then saw some random video on YouTube saying the series lost its edge and now you hate it because you're a sheep. Now for the verdict. Does this game deserve a download, and should you play it? I speak not as a fan, but as a reviewer when I say this. Yes, absolutely, +1 Ratchet to your collection. It's a guaranteed 6 to 8 hours of fun, and you'll enjoy pretty much every moment, whether you've played the series before or not. It's even got a full New Game Plus mode where you can further upgrade your weapons beyond even the current max, a staple for the franchise. Ratchet's always been an incredibly replayable game, so if you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, this franchise is always a good bet. If you do download it, it's going to take up 26 gigabytes on your hard drive, so it's not huge, but it's also not tiny by modern standards. If you're a trophy hunter looking for some fresh meat, you can easily platinum the game within about 15 hours or so. Trust me, I did it myself. And lastly, if you're watching this after the game is no longer free, it goes for $20 regular price. At that bargain bin price, it's absolutely worth that as well, and it often dips down to $10 on PSN. There's a reason this is one of the top PS4 games out there, and why March is being called one of the best PS Plus months in years, if not ever. If you play Ratchet & Clank, at the very least, I can guarantee you're gonna have a good time. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe for more, and if you want to watch more PlayStation content right now, you can watch my review of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, or my review of Insomniac's other platformer series, Spyro the Dragon.